So welcome everybody. So as I say, we've got a series of webinars this year, all around our conference theme. And so I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the conference, and then we'll go on to the talk today. So our conference theme is Cycles of Life. We've got a really nice design you can see with, well, there are actually 5 elements within this tree because we have the green, the red, the yellow, and the white, and then the black branches of the tree connecting to the earth. So if you think it's, we can have some nice debates over the appropriateness of that, but I actually think that when you look at the seasonal Yangsheng, there's a real connection of water to the earth. And so it has a nice symbol here. And in the middle, we have our character Jie, which we'll talk about a little bit more, both in the conference introduction, but also in the talk today. So on 7th and 8th of June at Kensal Park in Milton Keynes, it's going to have a lot of practical clinical content, acupuncture and herbs, but really focused on treating at different stages of life. And I think this is something that is often not addressed so much in our teaching of how we will learn our practice. Some of us might specialize in pediatrics, for example, but how often do we actually talk about geriatrics, which quite honestly, with many of our patients, we end up treating older people with a wide variety of conditions and often multiple comorbidities. So we'll really focus on this idea of what does it mean to treat at different stages of life. So we're going to have a lot of experts on cycles. You're going to see some of them in a moment. And we're also going to have a focus on diagnosis, so the whole conference is an extremely practical element of it. And quite importantly, it's not just about the cycles of life in the content of the clinical lectures, but it's also an opportunity to connect with all of us throughout our entire community, RCHM, BAcC, through all the generations as well. So lots of opportunities within the conference to meet and network and connect with all of the different generations of practitioners. And it's in a brilliant venue as well. So let's go through a few of the elements. It's also very affordable, and we're going to get into that too. So starting with our wonderful keynote speaker, we're really, really happy to announce that Elizabeth Rochade de la Valle will be there in person. I'm sure she's got a special place for many people here. Definitely got a special place for me. Her work has been incredible influence on me and an amazing inspiration too. Just some of her books on the right there. So she'll be giving the keynote on this character Jie. Quite coincidentally, I came up with this character myself to symbolize cycles. And the first meeting we had with Elizabeth, she said, I want to talk about Jie. So there's something about it that's definitely resonant with this conference. Means rhythm, node, or phase. And you'll find out much more as we go along, and certainly with Elizabeth's keynote on Jie. There it is in the middle there, Jie. Jie Qi is solar term, and we'll be talking about the solar terms when we go through this seasonal Yangsheng series, the 24 mini seasons, 15-day mini seasons throughout the year. And it also means joint or juncture. So there's an aspect of it which is really key for us understanding flow. How do things flow through a particular juncture or joint? And we know from our acupuncture, from our herbs, that qi often has, and blood often has a lot of trouble flowing through joints. So there's something very significant about this concept and this character to focus on for our conference. So on to the other speakers. So we have a number of sessions where we're learning to treat at different phases of life. Right from the beginning, from TCM strategies to treat implantation failure, from Xinjiang through to Rebecca Avern, addressing something that's really important for us. We all come across more and more today with ADHD. Moving forward, you have Yaya Maimon, who's going to be talking about menopause, and Andrew Flower will be talking about large herbal formulae, but particularly in relation to some knotty diseases like gout, bronchiectasis, and cancers, which often manifest in the elderly. And then furthering on the practical clinical lectures, we also have a couple of lectures which will talk about all stages of life. So Moshi Heller is going to do a two-part extravaganza on the first, second, and third cycles of life on Jing and immunity, and Connie Cooper will be talking about orthopedic acupuncture for the sinews in children, adults, and the elderly, and how you might adapt your treatment. And she'll also throw in a little bit of herbal treatment there as well. And then we have a number of lectures which are more focused on the philosophy and theory and expanding our ideas of cycles in the cosmos. Elizabeth will be talking about the phases of gestation. Deborah on the rhythms of life from the Neijing, and Angie Hicks will be talking about her realizations about spirals, vortices, and needle technique. And then again, furthering this practical focus, we have a practical diagnosis focus on the pulse with Jamie Hamilton. It's going to be a two-part masterclass on the geriatric pulse. I think we all know how difficult it is quite often to understand and map on what we're feeling in pulses in the elderly to actually what's in the textbook. So Jamie he's an author of a really good, simple book on the pulse. And he's someone who's really studied and thought about it for a long time. So I think this is going to be a really useful lecture for us all. And then Jen Wade is going to be giving her insights on her lifetime in practice, implementing the 5-element diagnoses of color, sound, odor, and emotion. Just to note that there's a really good acupuncture and herbal balance, no matter what your interest, whether you're more interested in acupuncture, more interested in herbs, or love both. We've got 11 sessions which feature acupuncture, 7 sessions that feature herbs, but actually it all comes together in the heart, where there are actually 10 core theory diagnoses and roundtables which apply to all of us as practitioners. So there's a huge amount of content there. And in case you're concerned about concurrent sessions, we're just tying up the details at the moment, but we will have an announcement coming soon about the amount of recordings that we'll be able to do and make available afterwards. Definitely some of them will be recorded, possibly all, but you'll see the announcement coming up soon. Onto roundtables, if anyone gets the Monty Python reference. We've got 4 different roundtables which are going to be bring all of our speakers together across the weekend. The reality behind rhythms, which I will be on with Deborah Wolf and Elizabeth Rochat. This is really how do we move from the theory to reality? How do we actually move from all these different amazing theories about cycles and actually make it something concrete we can use in the clinic? We've also got one on pediatrics and geriatrics, which it's quite an interesting comparison point. What are the similarities? What are the differences? What can we learn from each that we can apply to the other? Then a very important topic is how we retire as practitioners. This is something we don't often talk about, but we all have to face this question at some point. Some people will say, well, I'll never retire. And some people will. And I think we all have different ways of engaging with this really important question. So we're going to have an open discussion about it. And then we're going to have a panel which is looking to the future. So the future phase, where are we headed? And this one will be a panel which will have people from all across the UK acupuncture and herbal profession and worldwide. So there's going to be a dinner on Saturday night, which we'd love you to come to. It's going to be a joint BAcC and RCHM celebration. It's going to be an opportunity to connect across the generations and also to help celebrate our amazing 30 years of the BAcC, which we'll be celebrating all year too. The venue is a really nice one. We think you're really going to like it. It's green and fresh. It's on top of a hill, centrally located in Milton Keynes, nice and accessible. Amazingly, there's a free access to a sports center and spa all weekend with gym, swimming pool, tennis, squash courts, jacuzzi, sauna, steam room. And really great to hear is very good value. The on-site accommodation is £70 a night, including breakfast, but make sure you use the discount and also follow the instructions on the website because you have to put the coupon code in at the beginning rather than when you're put it into the basket. We might make a video to make that a little bit clearer, but if you have any trouble, just let us know. Again, extending that value, there are discount rates for BAcC and RCHM members. There are special discounts for students and special discounts for new graduates for BAcC and RCHM. So if you're in the RCHM New Practitioner Scheme, or if you're a BAcC graduate under 2 years, you get that discount. So make sure you take advantage of all the discounts. And of course, we have early bird rates going now. So get your tickets in early so you make sure you get your early bird prices. So that's the URL for the conference. Really, really hope you can come along. But as I say, that's not all. We're running a whole number of events this year, which are free to all BAcC and RCHM members. Part of this all-year collaboration, the 4 seasonal Yangsheng webinars, the free Cycles of Life themed webinars, which I'll talk about in a moment, and then there'll be more to be announced, more collaborations between BAcC and RCHM, and more great value and content for you as members. So the seasonal Yangsheng webinars, you've turned up to this one, so congratulations. But in the summer, I'm absolutely over the moon to be able to announce that we have booked Henry McCann. So any of you who, you may know him for his work on Tong, his work on classical medicine, his work on bleeding, but he's also one of the leading writers and thinkers on particularly the solar terms and seasonal Yangsheng. So absolutely over the moon that Henry's decided to say yes for our summer Yangsheng webinar. And we hope to get equally stellar guests, leading thinkers in seasonal Yangsheng for autumn and winter as well. So watch this space. We've also got 3 other speakers that will be fitting into our program before June. George Monkhouse, Juliet Bromby-Phillips, and Isabel Cosgrove. As I say, watch out for more announcements as those dates get scheduled in. So I really hope that you do come along to the conference, but I'm sure that the main thing you come today to see is the talk today on Spring Yangsheng from the Neijing. So this talk, I'm going to go through a fair amount of material. At the end, you'll get to see a lot of resources that you can watch further videos and get further information. The slides will be available through the BAcC or RCHM after the talk. So you don't have to remember anything. And what I really wanted to give you a sense of is not just some advice for the spring, which is there's going to be some practical advice at the end. But I also really wanted to give you a sense of the centrality of Yangsheng theory in the Huangdi Neijing. It's been a real passion of mine. I'm going to give you a little bit of background how I got here and how I managed to have a certain number of realizations. And once you understand the place of Yangsheng, and that it's not just something to the side, it's something that's central in the understanding of the Neijing and the understanding of physiology, pathology, and how that connects to cycles and the seasons, you'll see that it's a lens that we can look through to understand the whole of Chinese medicine. And that's where I want to give you a glimpse today. I'm just going to look into the waiting room because there's a few people. Helen, have you seen the waiting room? Because it looks like there's a few people waiting to come in. Oh, here we go. There we go. That's great. Let admit them all. Great. Okay, so on to the talk. And there'll be opportunities for questions at the end. So many of you will know what Yangsheng means, but just for anyone who's not aware, Yang means nurture or to nourish or to take care of. And Sheng, well, I'm going to translate as life here, but you'll see that we're going to get to know this character Sheng really, really well, because to understand spring, we need to understand this character. But when I explain it to the public, I normally use this definition: techniques using Chinese medicine principles to promote health that anyone can use. And this is the everyday way that Yangsheng is used in Chinese culture. You actually see this term quite often used. You might see a foot soaking shop in Taiwan or China, and they'll say it's a Yangsheng foot soaking shop, and it's a technique that's being used using Chinese medicine principles to promote health. So I like this term for the public if I'm explaining Yangsheng, but you'll see there's a deeper understanding of Yangsheng as we go forward. So in essence, Chinese medicine, self-help. So just a little bit of background about me. I've been interested in Yangsheng for about 20 years. In my early 20s, I went to Taiwan to study Chinese. This is a picture of um, the campus of the University Language Center that I studied at in Tainan in the south, if you're interested. Really nice place. And I met an amazing doctor while I was there, and he's really the reason I studied Chinese medicine. And when I first met him, he had opened a 24 solar term restaurant where the menu changed every one of the solar terms. The solar terms are roughly 15-day periods, and there's 24 of them in the year. They each have special names, and the names reflect the change of the season in that 2 week period. So in the Chinese calendar, you can break things down in smaller and smaller and smaller chunks. You can break it down into every single day. But the solar times seem to have a special place in people's mind, and you can understand the minute changes in the seasons according to these solar times, and you can take different Yangsheng approach. You can treat people differently. And so the fact that he had a restaurant where he changed the menu every 15 days, that was just blew my mind completely. So that was one of my first experiences of Chinese medicine in Taiwan. Just a few pictures of this is what he cooks on an ordinary day. His he's an amazing chef, but very simple, very achievable food. And you'll see that he always has multiple dishes. He's always all the flavors are always represented, but in different balances. And he's always looking at the weather, looking at the time of year, and everything is being finely tuned. And he's looking at whoever's he's cooking for as well, and he's putting things in, um, calculating all of these variables and putting it into the food. It's absolutely amazing. And I've been able to pick up a fair amount of this over the years. I think probably a fraction of what his understanding is, but I want to share some of that. And it's one of the reasons why I've been able to develop this knowledge is I've been able to see it in practice, but also it comes from a number of other sources too. So just running through a few other pictures you can see here, you'll get all these slides just to see the creative way that he cooks every day with all of these different dishes. So what I got to see in Taiwan is that there is this high level, and so I wanted to pursue it. And over time, I looked at many different areas to try and find, well, where is this solid high level that my teacher in Taiwan has? This is a picture of all the Yangsheng books that I've bought, and a lot of the best ones are actually they're popular written Yangsheng books you find in just regular bookshops, and they're often written by brilliant doctors and thinkers. And so over the years, I've studied a lot of the books. Obviously, you'll see the importance of Chinese language and culture later on to developing this. Also from my clinical practice, observing in clinical practice, reading the classical texts, doing multiple therapies as well has really helped because, as you'll see, that there are certain things you can't understand unless you do acupuncture, unless you do Twine R, and then unless you do herbs, because the herbs will give you the flavor theory, and you can apply your physical knowledge of the anatomy of the body, coupled with the flavor theory. You'll start to see that there's a deeper way to look at things, and obviously great teachers as well. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So it comes back to the essence of this. So if we want to understand, we go to the absolute core essence of what we're trying to get at here. It's very simple. From the beginning of life on Earth, there's been a fluctuation between warmer and lighter to colder and darker and back again. And that's in the day-night cycle and it's in the seasonal cycle. And this is the absolute essence of what we're talking about here. And much of the time, when you look up something like circadian rhythms in Wikipedia, it's like a footnote. It's like, well, here's the book on physiology and pathology in Western medicine. And by the way, there's this funny little thing in the index called circadian rhythms. And yeah, if you're interested in that, look at that. But otherwise, it's not really relevant. If you actually think about evolution, you'll realize how unbelievably central it is. We evolved from the smallest bacteria to what we are right now. And the main mission of a bacteria or of any life form is to maintain its temperature balance between extremes and to maintain its fluid balance between extremes. And the main stressor that it has is the seasonal and day-night cycle. That means that our entire evolution, the entire development of our DNA is is mainly a response to this, going from hot and light to cold and dark and back again. So this is hardwired into our genes, and that's the yin yang symbol. That's the Tai Chi symbol. It's hardwired into everything that we are. And this is so it's not just a footnote. So there's a little bit of a rant there. But the Chinese understood this and they put it in the core. So one thing that I've been told a number of times by experienced teachers is you've got to look at where something sits in a text. So in the in the Yellow Emperor's Classic, chapter 2, it's right at the beginning. And there's a strong argument to say that chapter 2 is laying out a framework for the whole of the Su Wen, particularly chapter 2 of the Su Wen. And in chapter 2, it's the one where they go into the seasons. And in this chapter, they mention four characters that are the underlying characteristics, the underlying dynamics of each season. Now, for various reasons, kind of linguistic and the way that things were put together within the 20th century in Chinese medicine, these characters kind of got de-emphasized for some reason. And even in the Chinese text that I read, I've got a Foundations of Chinese Medicine in Chinese, and they don't seem to highlight these enough. However, if you buy a Yangsheng book, these are the first things that you learn, and you see that you're going to see how much they're highlighted within the Yellow Emperor's Classic. So these four characters, also sometimes called the four times. Sometimes the sishi, the four times is also called the four seasons. But actually, it's not just the four seasons; it's the four times because it also relates to dawn, midday, dusk, and midnight. And so dawn and spring are represented by this one on the left, Sheng, growth. I'm going to translate it as growth. You're going to see there's many translations to it. And then the one at the top is Jiang, maturity, which is relates to summer and to midday. And the one on the right is Shou, and it relates to autumn and dusk. And then Tang at the bottom, which relates to winter and to midnight. Now, understanding what these characters mean and how to apply them is, as I say, if I say this is core to us, this is the life response to the journey between cold and dark to hot and light and back again. And you're going to see in detail what that response is. Uh, just give me one moment. I'm just going to mute everybody. All right. Okay, great. Thank you. Great. So, chapter 2 of the I Ching. You may know this chapter. You may have seen that they have this four paragraph structure where they start with spring. So they say in the 3 months of spring, and then they have a bunch of advice. And at the end, they say it's the Tao of nourishing Sheng after the 3 months of spring. And in 3 months of summer, it says the Tao of nourishing Jiang. In the 3 months of autumn, the Tao of nourishing Shou. In the 3 months of winter, the Tao of nourishing Tang. So you can see those four characters have cropped up here. Now, I mean, a little bit, the one pinyin correction I really want to make is that in modern pinyin, it's DAO, so it's a much more accurate way to pronounce Dao. I think probably of all the characters, we should probably pronounce Dao correctly. But so I'm just putting the D here. So it's the Dao of Yangsheng, the Dao of Yangjiang, and the Dao of Yangshou and Yangcang. So when we say nourishing, it's the Yang nourishing character we saw at the beginning. So you can see here that this is actually one of the first instances of the term Yangsheng. It's in the Neijing. And so I initially translated it as cultivating life, but here it's actually specifically the spring. So we're talking about the spring here because in summer you're nourishing Jiang, in autumn you're nourishing Shou, and in winter you're nourishing Tang. Now, later in the Neijing, it does use Yangsheng as a catch-all term for all four of them. But it's just interesting. Sheng does mean life in a number of contexts, but it also here means the essence of spring, and we'll see what that is as we go along. So I'm not going to go through these in detail today because we haven't got time. I want to get onto the spring. But these are the translations from each of the four seasons. And as I say, you'll get these in the slides. But they all start with in the 3 months of whatever season. Then they name the season. Then they give some advice. And at the end, they say these are the correspondences of the seasonal qi, here, the spring qi. And that's the Tao of Yangsheng. And then they say, if you go against it, you'll harm a particular organ. And then they'll say uh, the next season will have pathology. So here it's laying out the pathological, physiological and pathological framework, one of them of the Neijing. There's many of the frameworks in the Neijing, so you can't say that it's only one thing. But this is certainly a really important framework that's being laid out. And there's an argument to say that it actually forms a key framework of the whole Su Wen. Now, as you say, you can go through each season like this in the 3 months of summer, in the 3 months of autumn, and in the 3 months of winter. So I won't prejudge what Henry McCann does in his lecture, but it's very possible that he will come back to this passage. These are the source core passages, and there's a huge amount contained in these few lines. So you can put in the chat an answer to this. In order to understand this, I want to give a little bit of depth in what is actually happening in the body's response to each season. So if the red in these diagrams is where your yang qi and fluids are, and in a lot of classical thinking, the yang qi and fluids flow together. So that means that, well, the blood carries warmth, right? The fluids carry warmth. So the blood and fluids can go more to the exterior, and the exterior is the periphery, the arms, the hands, the legs, the feet. And they can also go more deeply into the cellular layer and into nourishing the internal organs. So in the chat, maybe if you can say what you think which diagram is which. You can say left and right, which is summer and which is winter. Okay, Catherine Scott, left is summer. Wallace, left is summer. Okay. Penny, left is summer, right is winter. Look, everyone's too good here. So now we're going to find out quite why. Everyone's got it. Great. Okay. So the left one is summer and the right one is winter. So very simply, if I want to put it very simply, in summer, the challenge is getting too hot. And if we're too hot, the way that we adjust is to sweat. So all of the yang qi and fluids have to go out to the exterior to be able to sweat. In the winter, the danger is that we get too cold and we can't support the metabolic function of the body or the yang qi. So everything goes deep. And there's another explanation, is that when we're at rest, when we're sleeping, we need to protect those vital organs because we don't need any blood and fluids in the limbs of the body to activate them to actually do stuff. So it's also activity and rest. When we have activity, all of the blood and fluids and the yang qi has to go out to the limbs. And what's interesting is this is wholly supported within Western medicine, right? So they just haven't identified the importance of it, that's all. But if you read any kind of Western medicine manual, they'll talk about the flow of blood and fluids into the tissues and into the limbs and back again. And it relates to our nervous system, it relates to fight or flight, it relates to our hormonal system. There are all these different regulators, but it's absolutely understood. It's just, as I say, the importance has not been understood. So look at the chapter 64 of the Su Wen, and this is a famous one. In spring, the qi is in the Jing Mai, so that's in the primary channels. In summer, the qi is in the Sun Luo, which some people translate as the capillaries, but it's the small blood vessels, so it's more superficial. It's going outwards. In late summer, the qi is in the muscles and the flesh. We'll talk about that one in a moment because that's you can see we're talking about 4 seasons at the moment rather than 5, but let's put that one aside for the moment. And then autumn, the chi is in the skin. So it's gone all the way out and now it's coming back in. And in the winter, the chi is in the bones and in the marrow, so obviously deep. So this is clearly backed up in the Neijing, this framework of going from internal, going outwards, coming back in. And you can see more detail later in chapter 64. You don't normally get, people have seen the initial quote, they haven't seen the later quotes often. So this is Sheng. In spring, the chi of heaven begins to disperse into the open. The chi of earth begins to flow out. What is frozen breaks open. The ice melts. The water flows and the jing are passable. Hence, the human chi is in the mai. Now, what's really interesting here is that the Neijing is flipping backwards and forwards between describing what happens in nature and what happens in our bodies. And this relates exactly to the solar terms and the names of the solar terms, because they really relate to, for example, there's stages within spring where they refer to the iced up spring water melting and then that spring water flowing down into the rivers. And this is exactly the metaphor that the Neijing is using about the blood and fluids in our body, that they can freeze up and that they can flow more smoothly. And in physics, it's very well known that the temperature of a fluid dramatically affects its viscosity. And there's a great video I can link you to if you're interested on how you can actually hear the difference between hot and cold water. And we don't know that we have that ability, but then when you realize that you actually do know the difference between the sound of hot and cold water, and what we're hearing is the viscosity. And the viscosity is affected, so it's obviously going to be affected in the quality of our blood flow and in our fluid flow. And again, the Chinese are just noticing this and cataloging it. In the summer, the jing are full and the qi overflows. It enters the sun law, which thereby receive blood, and the skin is filled and replete. So the sun law again are the capillaries, and this is the Jiang phase. And in autumn, the qi of heaven begins to contract things. The soli are obstructed, and the skin is pulled together tightly. So as you'll see, shou means gathering. So there's this gathering force that happens in the autumn. Everything pulls together. And then in winter, everything is covered and stored away. Blood and qi are in the center. They are attached to the bones and the marrow internally and penetrate the five zang. So we couldn't be more internal here. Blood and qi, bones and marrow penetrating the five zang. So it's really interesting. And I was actually reading a bit about fluid absorption and transfer today from a Western point of view. Quite interesting how I think that when the Chinese are talking about this internal external flow, they may also be talking about fluids going to the cells and fluids coming out into the bloodstream and into the interstitial areas as internal external as well. But I think that's an interesting thing for us to think about too. So as we know now, summer is the one on the left, winter is the one on the right. And you'll see here that, just to emphasize, the yang fluids are on the exterior and the toli are more open. And in winter, the yang fluids on the interior and toli are more closed. And what's interesting, again, this is when you look at the language, that actually jiang in one context means open, and tang in another context means closed. So all of these four main characters, they have a huge number of different translations, but all of the translations give a little different piece of the picture of what this concept is. So jiang can also mean maturity. It can be coming to maturity, but it can also mean open. It can also mean appearance, whereas the opposite, tang, can mean to be concealed. And if we think about, a blossoming flower that comes out in the spring and the summer, that manifests and that's appearing, but then it's hidden in the winter. The potential is there, but it's hidden. So there's this idea of hiding and manifesting, which is relating to that flow of cold and dark to hot and light. So there you go. There's also this idea of furling and unfolding. furling, folding up in sunshine's absence, and unfolding to the sunshine. So this is something that is happening in our bodies as well. Nature is hardwired into us. This closing down is also a folding up. You know, when we're cold, we literally wrap ourselves up. We fold ourselves up. We can fold ourselves into the fetal position. When we're warm, we open up. And I think the best example of that is a cat. So I think it speaks for itself. The picture on the left and the picture on the right. And then the human beings are the same, right? So when the sun comes out, we'll go out, we strip off, we open ourselves up, and we try and expose as much of our body to the sun. And then what we're doing is we're exposing the body to so the sun can penetrate through all of those layers. Ideally, it can go all the way down and clear out anything that's stuck in there. And then when it comes to winter, then we wrap up and we close up again. So we protect ourselves. And this cycle is also represented by the four celestial animals. So you have the white tiger, the black tortoise, the azure dragon, and the vermilion phoenix. Now, if we orient them in the way that I'm going to orient things in a moment, the dragon here would just be on the left, rising, and if we're facing south, for example, the phoenix at the top here, and then you got the descending and gathering dragon, and you have the tortoise. And so it's interesting that there's a dragon tiger relationship in Chinese philosophy and culture. And you know, it's there in all sorts of hidden places like crouching tiger, hidden dragon, right? And then you've got this idea of something hidden as well, and the dragon hiding and emerging. Again, all of these themes come out all through Chinese culture and philosophy. So effectively, what we're looking at here is a cycle where in the Sheng part of the cycle, whether it's in the morning or it's in the spring, there's an aspect which is waking up the yang, and the yang and the fluids move up and out to the exterior. And then there's an element where you've got the Jiang, which is where this is in summer or midday. And the challenge now is to maintain this yang and fluids at the exterior without overheating, without drying out. So that's the challenge of summer, and the totally are more open. And then in autumn, the challenge is to bring it all back in again to gather the yang and fluids inward and allow them to condense. And then in winter, the challenge is to maintain them on the interior, to seal them on the interior so that we can protect ourselves against the extremities of cold. And that is a constant flow. And again, this now you can understand that this initial chapter of the Neijing is pretty significant. So as I say, you can see them as seasons, germination, growing, maturing, collecting, and storage. But you can also see them as different phases of life too. So Sheng relates to probably everything more or less when you're under 18, let's say, when you're still growing and developing. Then when you're into the maturing phase, something like between 20 and 40. And then as you get to 40 to 60, more or less, we can be really still active and great, but we have to take care of ourselves a little bit more. You have to have a bit more of a nurturing and a gathering perspective. And then as we get older, into older age, obviously it's different for different people. And if you've been doing Yangsheng well, maybe you can be feeling just like a teenager all the way through into your 99. But for most people, as you get older, you start to have to conserve more and more and more. So there is an aspect of phases of life here with these different phases. And then there's nothing that symbolizes it more than the hibernation cycle of a squirrel, for example, when they're going to gather the nuts, and literally gather the nuts in the autumn. They will then hibernate and they will go into dormancy, and they will go into a completely internal state, and then they'll awaken, and there's mating season towards the spring and the summer where you get the most activity. So this is the framework for the whole year, for the whole year of Yangsheng seminars, where we're going from this picture down at the bottom to the picture up above, and then the picture down at the bottom again. And so if you have the extremes, as the extreme of cold and the extreme of being internal and closed as winter, and then the extreme of summer of being open and warm in summer, then it makes sense then if we want to define spring. Spring is just simply the journey from the picture on the bottom to the picture at the top, which means the spring is just where our yang qi is on a journey from going the most internal state and rising up and out until it gets to summer. So it's up and out. That's what the motion of spring is. So, and that is what Sheng means. So Sheng means grow, right? It means grow, it means life, it means expand, it means to give birth, all of these concepts. So you can think of a germinating seed growing up and pushing its roots up through the ground. That's the sense of spring. And I've got these pictures of the skin here, so it's also relating to sweating, because if something is your yang qi is going up and out, that's the sweat mechanism. Um, and then you get to the summer, and then if if spring is the journey from the picture on the bottom to the picture on the top, autumn is the journey from the picture of the top from the picture to the bottom. And that's going to be gathering then. So from everything externalized and open, we need to start to close down and gather inwards. So that's the energy of the autumn, and it's also the energy of dusk. So right now, we're doing this talk, and it's the energy of dusk. You can, when you walk outside, it's starting to grow quieter, stiller, and that's facilitating this gathering. And actually, we can think about it in terms of sleep cycle and insomnia too. So if you're too overstimulated, if you're in the Shang phase in the evening, you might not be able to get to sleep. But when you go outside, what's interesting is nature conditions us into the phase that we're supposed to be in. When you walk outside at this time of night, there's a stillness. And there's something that engenders the quality of gathering and moving inwards. So this is one of the really beautiful things, is that the seasons not only present a challenge to our health, but they also condition us. They condition our chi, and they form it, they shape it, and they put it into the right in the right situation. They're actually putting it into the right form. So we need the cold as much as we need the warmth. We need this cycle because that's the entire thing we've evolved in conjunction with. And you'll see that some of the solar terms, uh, if you look at them, the ones in autumn all mention dew on the ground. So you have this idea of condensation, of something that's collecting and gathering. And then as you get into winter, it freezes, right? So you get some of the solar terms talk about being frozen. And we can think about our fluids like this. So our fluids are dormant and still in the winter, and we stir them up so they grow and they move outwards and they get warm and they get hot, and then they sweat and they emerge, and then they gather in and they go on the inside, and then they start to slow down and freeze in the winter. So we've got this movement, and that also informs us when we're looking at our patients that all of those processes are happening in our patients throughout the year. So helps us to understand how we can treat at different times of year. And the we can tailor our treatments, and we can tailor our Yangsheng as well. So moving on, you might ask, well, does this correlate to the elements? Yes, it does. It does correlate to the elements. Um, the elements, however, mean lots of things in lots of different contexts. So I'm keeping it really simple here. You absolutely can say wood has a rising energy, metal has a descending and gathering energy. You can say that. You can absolutely say that. However, sometimes it's just easier to say, well, in summer, all of our fluids and yang qi are on the outside, and then in winter, they're all on the inside, right? It's not to say that the elements are incredibly useful concepts, but if we want to not confuse the levels of what we're talking about, because sometimes that happens when we talk about the elements because they've got so many associations, we can just say, well, look, spring has this upward and outward, summer has this manifestation, autumn has this gathering, and water has this, and winter has this storage. But here, and so actually they call this, they call it the four times in the five elements. It's a collective noun, 四时五行. So actually, they show that these are actually all part of the same concept, and they stem from each other. They generate each other. Um, but how do we use it in practice? So one of the ways we can use it in practice is through using flavors. So we can use different flavors to match these dynamics. So if going up and out makes us sweat, what flavor matches that dynamic? You can put it in the chat. What flavor matches the dynamic of something that makes us sweat? Yeah, spicy. Yeah. So easy one, right? But it's all very, very logical. What would be the opposite of that? What stops a sweat? It's not the most obvious one, but you can see it when if you're a herbalist, you'll certainly know. Um, and then when you see the logic, you see how the Chinese got there. Yeah, sour, absolutely. Sour stops the sweat. So spicy starts the sweat, sour stops the sweat. So if you think about the shape that your mouth makes when you have something sour, it all draws inwards. There's this drawing inwards of sour. So there's this holding aspect of sour. So you can see that there's a great logic to these to the matching of these flavors to the seasons. So spicy and sour. Now summer, the challenge is to retain fluids. What flavor do we normally have if we're dehydrated? What might we put in a glass of water if we're dehydrated or we've got heat stroke to replenish fluids? Yeah, sweet is definitely possible. Sweet increases the osmotic pressure in the blood actually from so sugar does that, sugars. Um, but salty, right? In fact, a fast rehydration remedy if you've got heat stroke is water with salt and sugar in it, right? So actually the flavor of summer is salty. Salt also, it brings fluids into the blood and interstitial tissues. So excess salt can create swelling, right? And it draws it away from the cells, but into the blood and interstitial tissues. And so what does it do? It increases blood pressure. So we often think about that, oh, I should avoid salt if I have high blood pressure. Yep, sure, that's a fair piece of advice. But it doesn't, you don't realize that actually that pressure, if you want to keep your fluids on the outside of the body, away from the cells and into the interstitial tissues, you use the salty flavor, it draws it out. And then in winter is bitter. Bitter drives downwards and inwards. Now, I know what some of you will be thinking. Those aren't the flavors that I was taught about the correlations with the elements. Now, I haven't got time to go into today how all of that fits together. And I have got other lectures which I'll link to later where you can actually see why these are different. All I have to say is that these are actually the tonification flavors in the Neijing, the tonification flavors for each season. They promote the action of that season. So we'll come back to that in a moment. So when we look at Sheng, Sheng is the essence of spring. And if we look at it from a linguistic point of view, it has a lot of different translations. So we've already looked at Yangsheng up here, but Sheng also means generate. It also means life, and it also means biology, so the study of life. It also means to give birth. So there's something about the start of it as well. And it also means raw. And so if you think about in spring or in the early part of the year, uh, everything is, it means unripe as well as raw, by the way. So everything is unripe towards the beginning of the year. But Sheng is also uncooked as well. So it's this idea that it hasn't been conditioned by anything. It's fresh, it's young, it's raw. It also means to grow and expand. And this word, Sheng Qi, does anyone know what Sheng Qi means in Chinese? Is anyone a Chinese speaker here? What Sheng Qi means? This is in modern Chinese. If you say, I am Sheng Qi, it's an emotion. I'll give you a clue. It's an emotion. You might be surprised. Sheng Qi actually means angry. Means angry. in modern Chinese. And I always used to wonder, why is that? Because Sheng, you look at all the other translations of Sheng, they're all so positive. Why does Sheng Qi mean angry? Because it just seems like it would be something really positive, like the Qi of life or something. But then remember, Sheng represents spring, represents wood. What's the emotion of wood? Anger. So literally the Qi of spring, which is anger, is Sheng Qi. So this is where the connection of the meaning of modern terms in Chinese connects all the way back to the Yellow Emperor's Classic, which is a really nice thing to see. And most Chinese people I meet don't know that connection. You only know that connection if you studied in Beijing. So you're ahead of them there. So as I say, this is the overall dynamic of spring. So we're going to get into spring now. You've come for a spring Yangsheng lecture. I've given you the foundation, and we're going to go into some of the characteristics of spring and some practical things you can do in spring. All the recipes and techniques and everything will be uploaded as a document and to download from both BAcC and RCHM. And as I say, this is a recorded video too, so you'll be able to watch it later if you want. So this is the overall dynamic of spring. Remember, it's going from when the fluids are internal and yang qi and fluids are internal and closed to a point where they're external and open. I think a really good way to think about the Sheng dynamic is kids. So we all know that kids have a huge amount of energy, but it burns out really quickly. There's a resilience to kids. They can seem to take lots of different knocks and they keep going and everything, but they're also super vulnerable at the same time. And that energy can just be wiped out, or they can be very, very vulnerable, or they can be way more robust than we thought they were. So it's this volatile energy is the Sheng energy, but it certainly needs to be nurtured and directed. So that's what we need to do with Sheng. So, we think about the liver qi. We don't want to put a stopper on it. We don't want to repress it. We want to guide it. We want to allow it to extend and manifest. As I say, it resists being suppressed. So we need to channel it. Another way to think about the Sheng energy is this germinating seed. If you think about the amount of energy that's necessary for a seed to go into something that's living in proportion to its overall energy, it's an amazing thing that happens. A seed coming into life, and if you've ever had to, I'm sure there's many gardeners here, it's not guaranteed, is it? You plant something and we have to nurture it. Sometimes you have to exactly the right conditions, otherwise it won't emerge. And so this is our seed of energy that hopefully we've sealed in a bit of energy in the winter, that we've got enough left over when it comes to spring that it will be able to emerge into something. And so when you think about what we're trying to do in spring, not only in our own Yangsheng, but treating our patients, is we don't want to stir it up too vigorously, but we want it to be vigorous enough and stimulated enough that it can start to grow and grow and grow. And when it builds momentum, it can then extend out throughout the whole body, just in the same way as if you want to go for a run, you don't go straight out sprinting. You do a few stretches, a few warm-ups. You're waking up those deep yang qi and fluids in the body so that they can start to build and then generate and move out to the periphery. And then you can get really into your stride when you're running it. And when you're really in your stride, that's like the Jiang phase. And when you're warming up, that's like the Sheng phase. So you can apply this framework to anything, to an exercise routine, say day-night cycle, to the seasons, to activity and rest, to performance and meditation, for example. Right now, I'm giving a talk, so I'm performing. I'm very externalized. I'm thinking. I'm expressing myself through my visible self. I'm making myself visible. This is all very much the Jiang phase, the summer phase of things. And then after this, hopefully I'll be able to calm down, and then I'll go to sleep, go straight into the Tang phase. So you can divide up the seasons in lots of different ways. So one of the ways you can divide it is just into the 3 months of spring. So the first month, which we're in right now, by the way, the Chinese spring started on the 3rd of February, so about a week in. We're in the first solar term, which is Li Chun, which is the start. It's called start of spring. And you've got this phase here where we're in that germinating seed phase. So we have to take care of our yang qi. We have to stimulate it. It has to come out, but we don't want to overexpend it. So it's just this nurturing, building, stimulating phase. Then in the middle of the middle month, you actually get a lot of volatility because as the warmth starts to affect life on Earth and the fluids in the ground, the water in the ground, what you start to get is that there tends to be actually more water in the atmosphere, so that it goes up, it creates clouds and thunderstorms, and you can get extremely changeable weather right here. So the key thing in the second month of spring is to maintain your balance in the face of rapidly changing weather. And then towards the end of spring, you're getting more towards the summer phase. So you're getting more towards sustained warmth and growth and the maturing spring energy. So you can think about it as budding and sprouting, balancing yin and yang, and powerful maturing wood. And you can think about that as a growing flame inside of us. And that's one way to think about Sheng in the spring. In some of my, I've done some longer courses in the solar terms, gone through every single solar term with lots of detail, lots of Yangsheng, lots of dietary advice and Qigong and all that kind of great stuff. And this is one of the slides I used. You can see these are the 6 solar terms of spring. So you've got start of spring, which we're in now. The next one's rainwater. As I said, as the springs unfreeze and as the water flows down and as the weather warms up slightly, it draws the water into the atmosphere and you have more rain. So let's see in probably in about 7-8 days time for the next 15 days, will it rain more? I mean, it's already started raining, hasn't it? It's already started raining a bit more. Very interesting, very spooky how things really relate. The third one is insects awaken. So we have this idea of the stirring of hibernating insects coming to the surface. And we can think about that as the yang qi as well. The yang qi is stirring and bringing to the surface. And then it's the Chun Fem, which is spring divide or spring equinox. That's when you get the unstable, changeable, you get electrical storms. My experience is literally on the day of spring equinox, every year, and we've seen this in the classes that I've taught, we all report it, you get surging heat symptoms. Watch out for that, spring equinox, surging heat, because the body is trying to express this this warmth from inside, and the spring equinox is a day of equal length, day and night of equal length, which means you've got the flip over from predominantly yin part of the year to the predominantly yang part of the year. And this spiking heat is just something that it's so evident in all sorts of different ways. Then you've got clear and bright, and you've got grain rain. But this is more an issue of spiking heat here. You have to start worrying about people who've got inflammatory conditions. You get, interestingly, I think there are statistics to say that during this time and early summer, you get more people with heart conditions. Very interesting, isn't it? How this all correlates. So, what do we do? Now, this is a slide that I use quite a few of these slides to teach the public. I've been teaching the public Yangsheng for about 10, 15 years. And so it's really interesting how much you can teach the public when you talk in these simple terms and how they can use it to treat their own health. So I had to think of, well, how do I represent this? So I came up with this this idea of a man in a cloud, basically. And the idea that we're trying, well, what are we trying to do? The goal of Spring Yangsheng? Well, we want to create this ability for the body to radiate out warmth from the center. So it's not that we're just getting flaring heat and we're cold below, we're cold inside, cold down here. No, we are creating an even warmth that spreads out from the interior and then manifests and surrounds the body in a kind of you can think about a protective warm layer of steam, right? So you can think of maybe you can remember a time in your own life when you were radiant with energy, and maybe it was when you're younger and you never had to worry about wrapping up warm. You just felt comfortable in any temperature, and you just had this kind of comfortable warmth in the body. Some people have never felt that. They've always felt cold, but that's a goal. It's a nice goal to have. And that's the goal that we're going for. If we can create this protective layer of steam around the body, it means the body can adjust. It can adjust to different temperatures and climates that you'll see that are challenging you in spring. So here it's that the body can dynamically adjust. So if it gets warm, that steam can come out. But if it gets a little bit cool or windy, it can close down again. So to have that dynamic adjustment is what you're really looking for in in spring. And so, what are these symbols here? So the fire is our Yangqi. Now you can think of the fire at the Dantian or the fire at the Mingmen. Um, so that core warmth, that kind of kidney yang warmth, if you like. But there's also a stomach yang warmth as well. So we can think of like kidney and spleen yang as that root energy. Um, and then the pot is let's say our fluid and grain, the fluid and grain that creates the chi. And so if we have good quality fluids in the body from that have been um, transformed from the food and water and grain that we put in the body, then they're ready to be steamed out to the exterior. And we need both. So we need fluids. We can't be too dry, but we also need warmth. And if those two go together and the warmth is underneath the pot, it can steam the pot, it can create the steam, and it can flow around the body. Now, you might think, well, what are you talking about? What I don't have a pot inside me, and I don't know what we're actually talking about in terms of experience. But what I'm getting at here is imagine if you've had a hot soup and you start to sweat. It's exactly that feeling that we're looking at. And you can make it with a hot soup. So we're going to talk about the hot soup that we'll make. Um, so, but just to summarize why we need this cloud, we need it because we need to prepare for summer. So we need to prepare to be able to have our fluids and yang qi on the exterior. But we also need it to protect against wind. And you'll see in a moment why it gets windier in spring. And we also need it to be able to release the exterior. Now, I did a whole series of lectures on the exterior, which I think I did some for the BAcC, some for the RCHM a couple of years ago, and I think they were both stored on both websites. But I'm going to try and make sure they're available for everybody if you want to go more deeply into the exterior, because it's a really key concept, particularly if you want to understand spring and summer. But releasing the exterior is that treatment principle that we have in all of our textbooks. We know certain points release the exterior, but here now we're getting to this point of like, okay, things can get trapped in a layer of the body in the exterior, and if we use certain techniques, we can release it. And one of the techniques is to use something spicy. So Sheng also has a physiological benefit for us. It enables us to keep warm. It's got an immunity aspect because, if you get sick, what happens? You get hot and it all goes up to the head, right? So it all goes up to the exterior, and that's to fight something off. So there's an immunity aspect. And the ability to adjust to climatic change. It also promotes circulation around the body. It's that liver chi, it's that up and out moving around chi. It creates blood pressure, and it assists our aerobic exercise because if we need to do aerobic exercise, all the blood and yang chi and fluids need to go to the exterior. It assists us to wake up, to become more alert. And then emotionally, it's about assertiveness and making boundaries. And it's also about our ability to express ourselves. So you could say, well, is it the liver chi? Yeah, it is kind of the liver chi. Yeah. And so, these are the relationships, but you can see that we can simply say that there is in physiology, the body needs to generate an upward and outward motion for our warmth and fluids. And this is what this is. So why is spring windy? So we know that the climate of spring is wind. It's actually scientific. I looked this up. As we enter the spring months of the year, the sun's angle relative to the surface of the earth increases, allowing more direct exposure to the ground, causing warm area to rise. When this warm air rises, air rushes in to fill in where it left, causing greater surface winds. So there you go. I mean, it's so amazing that all of the observations that the Chinese made, they're all backed up by modern science. But then again, in some ways, it's not amazing, is it? I mean, they're just kind of observing obvious things, and we've forgotten how to observe obvious things. So, that's another perspective. So wind is a problem because, particularly in spring, we've got this nurturing, germinating energy, and it goes up and out, and it peaks out by the surface, and then it gets really enthusiastic, and everything opens up, and then the wind comes in, and then goes deep into the body, and you get a wind invasion. So because the spring is so changeable, and the challenge of spring is for us to regulate this opening and closing, and gradually enable this yang qi to express itself. That there's a great opportunity for us to get wind invasions in the spring. And but the precise internal dynamic that's needed to address wind is this picture. So if we are able to create this nice, warm, protective cloud, that will protect us against the wind. And without going into lots of detail here, these are, just some of the symptoms that you might get if you have a problem with either your yang qi not going up and out enough, or being trapped at the exterior. And so the idea of working with this Sheng energy, it can come into, potentially a huge number of the conditions we see in the clinic. We can start to use this framework of thinking. And when I do my full course, I actually go into a lot of precise, different pictures, and then how we can precisely treat each picture with self-help techniques, or in the clinic as well. So some you don't have enough warmth going up and out, some you've got too much, some you've got trapped exterior and it's causing, I don't know, headaches or itching or something like that. But today I'm going to focus on how do we create this. So how do we experience it and create it? And just understanding how we create this, how we can generate it, is enormously beneficial, and it can already treat a lot of diseases and make you feel really good and vibrant. So that's good Yangsheng for the spring. So what does the Neijing say about flavors? It says the liver is governed by spring. If the liver suffers tension, quickly eat sweet to relax it. So interestingly enough, the sweet is a flavor that's often recommended in the Yangsheng books for spring. And I think there's a couple of explanations. One is that the sweet flavor buffers wood, right? So wood and earth, wood invades earth. And so if you build up the sweet flavor, it means that the wood will be directed better. It won't invade, it will go and do something useful instead of invading earth. One of the other explanations, a more modern one, would be that sweet flavor or sugars increase the osmotic pressure in the blood vessels. And so if you want to create the blood pressure in order for the yang qi to rise and that wood qi to rise, then you might need to eat sweet. So if the liver desires dispersion, quickly eat spicy to disperse it. And then it says one can use spicy to supplement it, to tonify, and sour to reduce or to disperse. So here we come back to this tonification and reduction. And why is it that sour is actually a dispersal flavor, not a tonification flavor? Because we all learn sour is wood, right? That's, again, answered in a different lecture. But just to say simply, if you think about the dynamic of the season, the dynamic of the season is up and out, we'll use spicy. And if you're thinking about the dynamic of the opposite dynamic, which is the dynamic of autumn, it's to gather inwards. That's what sour does. So spicy and sour are opposite here. And that's why spicy supplements it and sour reduces it. So how do we put that into action? There you go. There's the spicy and sour on this framework. We put it into action with probably the most famous formula in Chinese medicine. So I'm going to explain the formula first. It's got a lot of household ingredients, and then I'll explain how you make it at home. So this formula is called Guizhitang, which means cinnamon. Well, it literally means cinnamon soup. It's very interesting that we use this word decoction, as in boiling something in water to extract the ingredients of the herbs. But actually, tang means soup. It's the same word for soup. So it's cinnamon soup, you could say. Um, and what you have is a number of core ingredients that are sweet that build up the qi, that build up the qi and fluids. So sweet flavor builds up qi and fluid. So you've got licorice root, Chinese red date, and they're both sweet. And they go in to build up. Now, actually, they build up, you could say, this nutritive qi, but at the source, we still need food. We still need actual food and water. So the water of the herbal formula is 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 the fluids we're putting in. We can't do it just by having dry things. And the red date is actually a food. It's a food as well as a herb. So you've got food and water within there, and then you've got the licorice root, which is sweet and boosts the nutritive qi. But then you need something to take that out from the center to the exterior, and that's where we get spicy flavor. And the first one that goes both to the center and the exterior is fresh ginger. So fresh ginger moves the fluids. Very simply, it moves the fluids from the stomach, from the center, all the way out to the exterior. And it's assisted by cinnamon and cinnamon twig, which pushes these fluids further out to the extremities. The cinnamon is famous for unblocking the fluids and moving them, particularly warming the blood and unblocking the blood to move through the extremities. And that's why cinnamon's quite a key herb for pain, because it unblocks and moves. And you know, if there's free flowingness, there's no pain. If there's no free flowingness, there's pain. And then the last one is a sour herb. So this is the beauty of Chinese medicine, is that we don't like to go to extremes. So we want to build up and we want to push things out, but we also want to regulate. We want to make sure that we don't open up too much. So we've got that sour to counterbalance. And there's another idea that this sour flavor of this herb actually contains the fluids in the bloodstream so they don't leak too much. And that it also creates a more effective sweat, because if you gather the fluids to push them out, then you have a more effective sweat. So this actually creates what I would call an effective sweat. Very often we might sweat and we might sweat and sweat and sweat and we don't get better. And that's because our sweating is not being effective. Here we're creating an effective, focused sweat. It also happens to taste quite nice, which is great. So how do we make this at home? Well, I call it the exterior release chain, because as long as we have something to represent every part of the chain, we can substitute the ingredients and we can do something similar. Not exactly the same, but we can do something similar. So how do we do that at home? Well, just one addition. In the treatise on cold damage, where this formula is in, there's actually a few extra ingredients just have to put in there. They mention that obviously you've got hot water to make the decoction in the first place. But they also say that you have to eat rice congee. So you actually have to put some food in to make this happen. And wrap up in a blanket to actually raise the body temperature enough to have a bit of a shiver. They call it a shiver sweat. So that's to really use it medically. But we can use this principle without the blanket necessarily. We can use this principle to keep our yang qi in shape and to promote that Sheng function. We can use it in many different ways. So what's a creative way to use it? So instead of the peony root and licorice, which we don't often find in the shops, you can change it, for example, to something else sour. How about lemon? And something else sweet? How about honey? Ginger, honey, lemon, good for colds, right? Now you know why. It's ginger, honey, lemon. You've got your spicy, sweet, and sour. It's basically Guizhitang. And here you can refine it with the cinnamon and Chinese red date. Chinese red date you can get in most Chinese supermarkets. So using the same principle, there's a classic exterior release tea, which is just a tea made from ginger and spring onion. And this is actually in the formulas and strategy book as a formula to treat an early stage cold. But what's interesting is if anyone's into Asian cooking or particularly Chinese cooking, the most common start to a recipe is fry up some fresh ginger and spring onion in oil to remove to extract the aromatics. So it's not just for flavor, it's for effect. And this is the thing about Chinese cooking is that every ingredient is selected very specifically, not just for flavor, for effect too. And ideally it has both. And so there's a precision to Chinese cooking when it comes to the effects. So one that I really like is sweet warm congee. So if you haven't had congee before, I think most of us probably know that it's long cooked rice until it goes gloopy. You're looking at usually something like 6 or 7 parts water to 1 part rice, and then you just cook it a long time, boil it a long time until it all goes gloopy and all the rice breaks open, and you have this kind of rice porridge. Um, it's highly recommended for people with weak constitutions, for the elderly, and for the sick. In fact, for the very sick, they don't even give them the rice. They just give them the rice congee water. It's like pre-digested chi, and we can put different things in it and make it taste nice. And so I think that some people don't feel like it's an appetizing thing to have. That's possibly because they haven't had a really good recipe. And this one's quite a nice one if you like sweet things. We can use ginger or cinnamon powder, and we can use something sweet. So I like sweet potato. You can use honey. Rice itself has a kind of grain sweetness, which is a nice flavor, um, and it adds to that overall kind of ground level sweetness of the dish. So this is the recipe. I won't go through it now, but you're very welcome to look at it when this gets uploaded to the member sections afterwards. One of my absolute favorite ones, and if you've actually done it in-person classes with me, I often will make this and bring it along, is my favorite recipe from Fuchsia Dunlop's Every Grain of Rice, which is sour spicy soup. And this is the ingredients. I'll leave it to you to make it yourself. Absolutely delicious, but the effect is incredible. And this one's a little bit different because now instead of something sweet, we have something salty. And it's interesting that both salt and sugar have different effects to increase blood pressure and have different effects on fluids. So you can use, in different contexts, you can use salty to be something that kind of gathers and boosts the fluids and helps you to circulate them around the body, or you can use the sweet flavor, or you can use the sweet and salty flavor together, which can be really delicious. Uh, but here we've got the salty flavor, and then you've got the steaming out to the exterior with ginger and spring onion. Fuchsia Dunlop uses white pepper, which is amazing in terms of its therapeutic value. It really does create a sweat. So if you use it in the doses that you use, this quite often you will feel the sweat. I've brought this uh, soup to many classes. It's almost universally really liked in terms of taste. And then I get people saying, "Oh wow, my headache's gone," or "Wow, I can see really much clearer," or like something's opened up or something's cleared in my head. So it really does have a really acute therapeutic effect. It's really easy to make and it's everyday ingredients. And so you've got the sourness of the vinegar. I really love sour soup. You've got sour spicy soup in a Chinese version, but you have Vietnamese cooking has a lot of sour soups, and they're really delicious as well. This video, I will uh, you can either make a note of it or maybe I'll put a link in the eventual PowerPoint that goes around. It's called 7 ingredient restaurant style ramen, and it is a brilliant masterclass in how you preserve aromatics. It's absolutely genius. He just says, "Look, I'm going to make an incredibly flavorful ramen or noodle soup with 7 ingredients," and the way that he uses each ingredient in different ways is just absolutely brilliant. one of the things he does is he infuses ginger into the soup in three different ways. Um, and so you get this kind of multiple direction infusion of ginger into the soup. I know I sound crazy about going on this passionate about noodle soup, but it tastes really great as well. I made it as well. Um, so the main thing about preserving aromatics is there is an art to extracting the aromatics from cooking. So when we actually want to implement all this advice, it's no good just saying, "Oh, well, I'll put the ginger in and I'll put the spring onion in," or whatever the aromatic that you're using. So one of the arts is that you will tend to put the oil in first. You warm up the oil, make sure that you've either got an oil that has a high smoke point so that you're not heating up too much and it all starts smoking, or you just keep the oil at a temperature underneath its smoke point. Um, and then you'll put the aromatics in, and then you want to keep them on an even flame for a while, and just fry them up before you fry anything else. You fry up the aromatics, and what's happening is that the oil is extracting the aromatics, the flavor, effectively. You don't get the flavor. Oil is an amazing transmitter of flavor. And uh, as you do that, now very often what you'll see chefs do is that they will then, with a slotted spoon, they'll take the actual physical aromatics out because if they continue to cook them, they'll burn. And they'll just use the oil then to cook all the rest of the food in. And then that oil coats the food, and you've got the aromatics going through the food. It will not only taste delicious, but it has the effect because we're looking to extract the power of those aromatics for effect. And so there's a bit of it took me a while, maybe I'm a slow learner, but it took me a while to start to cook food properly, getting the Chinese food particularly, and getting the aromatics to infuse everything without burning them. But if you follow that procedure that I talked about, that's quite important. But if you like, you can just follow his video to the letter and you get an idea of how to infuse them in different ways. Oh, okay. So just to round off, we're almost there. Um, Acupressure in the spring. So, now you know the principle. You've got the Chinese medicine knowledge. You can start to apply it yourself. So, these are just pretty logical. So if you want to warm up that yang energy, you can warm and rub kidney 1, kidney 3, spleen 6, stomach 36, the dantian, the mingmen. You can start to just warm and invigorate. When you get to the middle of spring and you've got this fluctuating weather, it's going to be the time when you're going to get stuff trapped in the exterior, things coming up to express themselves, and just everything going haywire, which means that we want to um, open the exterior and we want to regulate it. So you can do your liver 3 and large intestine. You can do your liver 3 to facilitate the flow of the liver qi. Large intestine 4, large intestine 11, lung 7, gallbladder 20, do 16 to release the exterior. Do 20 just to regulate all that yang qi going up and down to the head. And then all exits and entries. So you can massage all of the Jing well points, but anywhere there's an exit and entry point in the body, it can tend to get stuck during that period of the middle of spring. And then when you get to late spring, this is the time of maturing wood. And so you want to help it express. Uh, so the liver needs to express itself and unblock. So any points in the liver channel will open things up. But heart and lung points to really help express and facilitate all of that flow through the cardiovascular system, but also through emotionally as well, through expressing and manifesting through the heart, pericardium, of course, and Sanjiao. So any of the fire points. Always spleen 6 and stomach 36. I mean, they're just universal to stabilize. You can use them at any time of the year, but to make sure that you've got enough yang qi going out there. But sometimes I find that the kidney points in the chest, they're points, you've got this is a point where the dormant energy of the winter in the kidney channel is expressing, it's connecting, it's about to go into full summer and express through the heart. And I think that there's sometimes I find those points quite useful sometimes. Acupressure works quite well with them if you find them, just to press in and see if you can release and open up the chest. Very, very good. Qigong in the spring. So again, if you're a Qigong practitioner, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, you can when you start your practice, you can recognize some of these phases. But really, the Sheng phase of any kind of exercise practice is the warm-up phase. So we're getting things open and moving. So in that first month, nurturing, cultivating, gently stimulating the root energies. That's what you want to do. You want to stir it. You're awakening something after a long slumber. Then in the middle of the season, you've got the second month of the season, you've got more dynamic and active qigong. And if you want to discharge stuck qi, really recommend things like this is kicking and punching routines, that not people, but kicking and punching and patting. Patting is very good for releasing releasing blocked chi. Also, the healing sounds as well, the vibrations that go all the way through. They're really good at releasing blocked chi. And then when you're getting into this flowing time of spring where things are really starting to build up and flow throughout the body, powerful flowing qigong and tai chi, really, really good. An expression of qigong is really good at this time. Of course, if you're a qigong practitioner, tai chi, you tend to do all of these things, but there are different aspects, different practices which have a little bit more of affinity with that time of year. So, as I say, you can go deeper and deeper into these things, and you can go into more and more precision. But I've given you an overview of the way from the theory of the Neijing all the way up into how we use it in practice. And in the course that I taught, which I may teach again, maybe one day when I've done my work as CEO and have a bit more time, you'll see that I did a lot of every season has its pathologies. Every season has a way that things can go wrong, and this is grounded in the classics. They talk about these particular ways that things can go wrong. I made them into different graphics. And when you then see it all seasons and all the different pathologies, you start to see, oh, wow, we can model a huge amount of the problems that we see in our clinic coming to see us through these lenses. And then you go back to the Neijing and you think, okay, well, this is actually part of what it's trying to get at. It's part of trying to lay out this framework for us to see everything through. As I say, there is not just one framework in the Neijing, lots of multiple intersecting ones. I'm not trying to say this is the one true way. It's not. It's one lens, but it's one lens that is clearly there in the Neijing. And the more you put it together, the more it becomes really useful in the clinic. And so you can actually start to see pathologies as a failure of Sheng to happen, a failure of Jiang to happen, a failure of Shou to happen, or a failure of Cang to happen, or it's happening too much. And then you can work out how to promote it or reduce it. So to finish off, just again, this will be in the handout. I have got a deeper 2.5 hour talk, which goes into a lot more of the, it answers some of the questions I didn't answer today, like why do there seem to be different flavors for different elements and things like that. And it goes into some of the ways, philosophical underpinnings, and it goes a bit more into detail in the other seasons. There's a link there. It's all free. You can watch it for free. And then there's a number of resources in both BAcC and RCHM member section. This will go up in the BAcC member section and the RCHM member section. So watch out for announcements on that. We've just renamed our campaigns bit to recorded webinars and campaigns in the BAcC site, so you'll be able to find things a little bit more easily. And also to note that I've done a number of different lectures on similar subjects before, but from different angles. So there's this exterior release series that I did a couple of years ago, and I'll try and make that available across both BAcC and RCHM. And there's some other lectures I've done on Yangsheng from different perspectives, so you can a lot of that's in the member sections. So just to finish off before we go to Q&A, just want to say that there's a lot coming up in the BAcC this year. We're trying to get a number of things over the line, announcements over the line, which you'll be able to see come. And I just want to give you a little preview of what's happening. So already announced, we've got a couple of webinars coming up in February. one BAcC Director on Education. And this will be, you may have seen the announcement that the BAcC and BARB are coming together. BARB is going to become an integrated accreditation function of the BAcC because both organizations have worked together for a long time. BAcC has been the main funder of BARB. BARB's educational principles are founded on the BAcC standards of practice for acupuncture and educational standards. And we're gonna talk about that. Myself, as CEO of the BAcC, and Nina as lead accreditation officer of BARB. We're going to come together and we're going to talk about the bright plans that we have to work together. We're pretty excited to actually work together and achieve more, and we really want to tell you what we've got in mind. Then the week after that, we've got a community conversational education because we want to know what you think. So we would love to hear from all member opinions on education and how we can move forward as an entire community and support what we have into the future. And that's a real theme of this year with the Conference of Cycles of Life. It's how do we take what we have and preserve it for the future? And I think that's a key focus for us. Then we're going to go through a few more announcements about the events that's coming up. We're going to have a business support focus. We're going to have more clinical content coming. To flag that those of you who are starting to see a little bit more activity from us in the Facebook group, we're going to be doing a formal relaunch of the Facebook group. There's going to be way more interaction, engagement, more community support, and hopefully it'll be a really nice zone where we can all come together and share our love for Chinese medicine. So that is coming. Some of you may have been wondering where is the interaction here? It is coming. Also, we're undertaking a bit of a website restructure, a member section and the public facing bit, the member section first. You're going to see that roll out at a certain point this year, and you're going to be able to find more content. It's going to be more user friendly, and you're going to start to see that there's more effective communication going and more optimization going out of the website. So we really hope that you're going to really appreciate the changes we make and find a lot more value immediately from within the website. And then the three other things that are happening. There's a lot going on this year, and this isn't everything. You're going to see lots more announcements, but it's the BAcC's 30th anniversary this year. And part of the reason why, well, the main reason why I came to do this job is that I wanted to support the amazing achievements of the BAcC and all the hard work of all the people that I really respected in this community have poured into the BAcC and built something that's really important to continue. And that's what drew me into this role. That's what I really want to support, and I want to communicate, help communicate outwards, so that the thing that we all care about, which is this medicine, can be sustained into the future. And there's going to be a great celebration of everything that's come before. There's going to be a celebratory issue of ACU in July, and a lot of things to be announced on that line. Also, Acupuncture Awareness Week 2025, that more information about that will be coming. And we also are due to reformulate our strategy for 2026 as well. There'll be more information coming about that. So lots going on in the BAcC this year, and we'll watch out for announcements and things will be coming soon. With that, about 5 minutes over time, I will open up to any questions. Feel free to unmute or put something in the chat. All right, someone, Helen posted my soup. She found it on. Great. Okay, so I think there was a question, wasn't there? Helen, you've been monitoring the chat. Can you let me know if there are any questions? So here we go. One from Penny here. Penny, do you want to ask it to me, or do you want me to? Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and find it in the chat again.
I've got it here about cinnamon.
Yeah, so I was curious about the preponderance of cinnamon in drinks during the winter, supposedly for its warming effects. Actually, my question, the text said arming effect. That's a bit of a fraud.
Which text is that? Is that
Well,
fine?
no, my question in the comments.
Oh, oh, warming. Oh, gosh, yeah. Now I understand arming effect. I was thinking, oh,
Yeah.
I haven't learned about the arming effect. Um, so,
Well, maybe
oh,
we're learning about that in other ways, but I'm not going to go there right
okay.
now.
So here's the interesting thing, right? We all think that oh, it's only the Chinese that talk about warming and cooling foods. Well, we think about mulled wine. What's in mulled wine? What ingredients? Well, cinnamon's one of them, right?
Yeah.
Clove, fennel seed, star anise, ginger, right? They're all warming. And when do we have mulled wine? We have it in the winter. So our ancestors obviously knew this, right? They had some idea of warming and cooling. It's there in our, and now we're in this strange position where the average person would think it's strange if you start talking about warming and cooling foods, but it's there in our own medicine. Um, one, when I studied with my teacher in Taiwan, he has a habit of just throwing out some comment, some reference to, I don't know, a text 300 years ago or 2000 years ago or something, and I'm trying to catch them and understand. Anyway, he says there's this amazing use of cinnamon and honey and what was it, and alcohol in this amazing text, and he called it 冰火之歌, 冰火之歌. I'm like, what are you referencing? And I'm trying to think like, what dynasty is he talking about? What text is he talking about? And I just started breaking it down. I was like, being is ice, Hor is fire, Gur is song, a song of ice and fire. Oh, he's been reading Game of Thrones. He was reading a Song of Ice and Fire, and it had a herbal formula with cinnamon and honey and alcohol, and so it just shows that this stuff can be really universal. So sorry, there's a couple of like funny quotes, funny stories to explain it, but I think that uh, it is about its warming quality. It's a short answer. Yeah.
Yeah, but my question
Oh yeah.
was, yeah, you were explaining how cinnamon is appropriate for spring. So
Oh okay.
I was thinking, well, if we're all using it in winter, are
Yeah.
we actually, sort of opening up
Yeah.
our exterior far
Yeah.
too early and then depleting ourselves? That was
Yeah.
my question.
Very good point. So uh, it's so there are herbs which definitely promote more of a sweat, and there are those that warm. Now, s most spicy herbs, a lot of spicy herbs have the ability to promote sweat, but they also have the ability to warm and keep things stirring. So it's um the a lot of the warmest herbs are also spicy, and they are really good to keep us warm in winter. Um, and I guess the clearest answer is to say that if you are promoting lots of sweats in winter with somebody who hasn't got a lot of yang qi inside, it might deplete the yang qi and then pull all of that um, yang out of the body. Um, the spicy warm flavors also stoke the Mingmen fire, so they can also restore that root yang as well. So I guess it's just a and what you've hit on is probably a big debate in Chinese medicine as well, how much you can do that. And some people would say that, if you want to really boost the kidney yang, you should pour in a lot of yin because to build it up, so you don't want to deplete it. And some people might say, no, you just use a huge number of hot, spicy herbs because that will stir it up. And the problem is you haven't got enough fire down there, and then you've got one of the age-old debates in Chinese history. Um, so, but in answer to your question, the main answer is that all flavors can be used in all months, and they all have different um, uh, in all seasons. They all have different roles. What I'm trying to get at here is not to say you must eat spicy in the spring. What my point here is that spicy matches the dynamic of movement that the spring is trying to engender in us, that we are trying to is trying to express itself in us. But what you'll find is that so for some people might have a lot of spiking heat because that's just going way too fast. All of that emerging warmth is going way too fast, and spicy would be the last thing you do because it's going too much. You might even get some sour on that, but to actually to restrain it. And so if you take one thing away here, it's the idea that, well, understanding that seasonal dynamic, which flavor matches it, and then look at the person and see what they need. But the final point is that that cinnamon soup has the ability to create that steam, which is generally good. Is a generally good thing to have to ward off cold and wind. I hope that answers the question, but I guess we get into like lots of long debates in Chinese medicine.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Uh, Great. Well, it's really nice to see everybody. I hope that everyone will consider coming to the conference this year and seeing each other in person. I think that it's a really important time when we can really make that personal connection. And I hope to see a lot of you. I think there's a lot of you that I've only seen on camera, so it'll be nice to see you in person too. But if you have any more questions, you feel free to drop me a line, and you'll see in BAcC e-news and RCHM mail shots. Will email you when the recordings are ready and when the handouts are ready too. So thanks everybody.